The apartment was silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. The scent of coffee lingered in the air, stale and bitter, a reminder of the morning routine that no longer had a place in her life. Sophia sat at the edge of the bed, her gaze fixed on the small, battered notebook resting on her bedside table. It was bound in worn leather, edges fraying from years of handling, and the pages were filled with her small, looping handwriting. The notebook hadn't been touched since the day he left. Her fingers hesitated over it, as if reaching for something forbidden. She could still see his smile in the back of her mind, hear his laugh echoing in the empty rooms of her memory. They had met years ago, their love blossoming quietly, like ink spreading on paper. But love was fragile, and life had its own plans. One day, he simply packed his things, leaving with a quiet explanation that still haunted her. "I have to go." He hadn't looked back, and she had been left with a heart full of questions and a book full of unfinished letters. With a deep breath, Sophia finally picked up the notebook, her hands trembling as she opened it to the first page. Her heart ached as she began to read, each word a bittersweet memory that stirred both love and loss within her. "Dear Lucas, do you remember the first time we met? It was raining, and you had forgotten your umbrella. I watched as you tried to shield yourself with a book, ducking under a coffee shop awning, as if you could somehow escape the downpour. I offered to share my umbrella with you, and I remember the way your face lit up. You looked at me like I had just handed you the sun. I knew even then that you were special." She smiled sadly, remembering that day. It felt like a lifetime ago. She had written that letter just a few weeks after they had started dating, intending to give it to him as a memento. She'd wanted him to know that their first meeting had meant as much to her as it did to him, but she'd never gotten around to giving it to him. She'd always thought there'd be time. Turning the page, she found another letter, written months later. "Dear Lucas, sometimes I imagine a life with you, a house by the sea, a garden with wildflowers, and lazy Sunday mornings where we drink coffee on the porch. I see us growing old together, watching sunsets and reminiscing about the life we built. It's silly, maybe, to dream so far ahead, but you've taught me that dreams are worth having. I hope you know how much you mean to me." She blinked back tears, her chest tightening as she read her own words. They were promises she had kept to herself, fragile hopes she had dared to believe in. The image of their life together had been so vivid in her mind, and now it felt like a ghost, haunting her with what could have been. She flipped through more pages, each letter revealing another piece of her heart. Each one was a moment frozen in time, a birthday surprise, a quiet night under the stars, the way he'd held her hand when she felt like the world was crumbling. Each letter was a love story in itself, and each one ended with words she had never been able to say. But instead of closing the notebook, Sophia picked up a pen. She hesitated, the tip of the pen hovering over the empty page. She felt a strange sense of purpose, an urge to say all the things she had never been able to. So she began to write, her words spilling out like a flood. "Dear Lucas, I don't know where you are, or if you'll ever read this, but I need to say these things. I need to tell you about the day you left, and how I sat in our empty apartment for hours, unable to understand why. I need to tell you that I was angry and hurt, and that I felt like I was losing a part of myself I could never get back. But I also need to tell you that I forgive you." She paused, her heart pounding. Writing those words felt like setting down a burden she had carried for too long. She had never forgiven him, not truly. But as she saw the words on the page, she realized that forgiveness was something she had needed, for her own sake as much as his. She turned the page and kept writing, each letter bringing a strange, bittersweet solace. She wrote about the life they had shared, the dreams she had cherished, and the things she had loved about him. She wrote about her grief, her healing, and the strength she had found in herself. "Dear Lucas, I've learned that love doesn't disappear just because someone leaves. It lingers quietly in the spaces they once occupied. It's in the smell of coffee, the sound of rain, and the way the sunlight filters through the window. You may be gone, but the love we shared is still here, woven into the fabric of who I am, and I think that's enough. As the weeks passed, Sophia kept filling the pages, finding a strange kind of peace in each letter. She wasn't writing to bring him back. She knew he was gone. She was writing to let go, to heal, to give voice to the words that had been trapped inside her heart for so long. Finally, one evening, she reached the last page. She sat in silence for a long time, her pen poised over the paper, knowing this would be her final letter. Dear Lucas, this is my goodbye. I've told you everything I wanted to say, and I feel lighter now, as if I can finally breathe again. I don't know where life will take me, but I know that I am ready to move forward. You were my love, my joy, and my heartbreak. You were a chapter in my story, and now it's time to turn the page. Thank you for everything. Goodbye, Lucas. She closed the notebook, her heart calm, her soul quiet. She had spent so long clinging to the memory of him, but now she felt free. She placed the notebook back on the bedside table, knowing she didn't need to open it again. As she turned off the light and climbed into bed, a sense of peace washed over her. She had found her own closure, her own way of letting go. And as she drifted off to sleep, she felt as if Lucas was still there, not as a painful memory, but as a part of her story, woven into the tapestry of her life. She had finally written the last letter, and in doing so, she had found her way back to herself.